Upon Laura's arrival through the door, a single glance and something clicked inside me. I just knew that my wife had strayed. Despite her explanation of late work hours, a feeling settled, firm as intuition, fueled partly by the anxious demeanor she wore that evening. Laura's telltale signs were as clear as day. She couldn't hide her unease, a giveaway to someone well-versed in reading expressions. Poker wasn't a strong suit, that was certain. Maintaining a composed exterior, I concealed any inkling of suspicion regarding my 5-year married partner's potential transgression. Instead, I opted to enlist a private investigator seeking tangible evidence. Both Laura and I are 27, when we met during college's senior year. 2 years of courtship led to our marriage, built on what I believed were shared values, particularly the staunch commitment to unwavering fidelity. I'd made it crystal clear before tying the knot. Infidelity was a non-negotiable deal-breaker. It stunned to realize that until this point I'd naively believed our life was flawless. I'm not the type to prioritize my career over my spouse. Quite the opposite. I showered Laura with tokens of affection, flowers, surprises, lavish dates. Our physical intimacy never waned. I possess a robust libido, and I maintain my appearance through regular exercise. Sure, I've got my imperfections, but neglecting my wife was never one of them. Laura wasn't the epitome of drop-dead gorgeous, but she boasted a pleasant appearance with curves in all the right places. Her figure was well-proportioned. Though her breasts weren't large, they weren't petted either. Employed as a paralegal at a prestigious law firm, she typically returned home after work, occasionally pulling overtime for significant cases. I thrived in the high-tech industry, ensuring a comfortable living for us both. Laura hailed from a well-off family. Her father, the proprietor of a substantial Texan ranch where oil reserves had been discussed and discovered. Insistent on a prenuptial agreement, he safeguarded primarial assets and shielded inheritances from potential future divorce settlements. Money wasn't my motive for marrying her, so signing wasn't a concern. Yet her father's unyielding racism, regularly aimed at Black and Mexican individuals, sowed my regard for him. Fortunately, I hadn't seen that trait mirrored in Laura, and since we lived far from them and rarely spent time together, it wasn't a significant issue. The private investigator I engaged was recommended by a friend who had used his services to uncover his wife's infidelity. Impressed by his efficiency, I visited the PCLI's office the day after my initial suspicion, detailing my requirements, and upon securing his services with a retainer, he swiftly commenced the investigation. After what I suspected was her first instance of infidelity, it took my wife a few days to resume her usual demeanor. I maintained the facade of a devoted husband, and she seemed to believe she had evaded detection. A week later, she claimed another late-night work session. Not as guilt-ridden upon her return, it appeared she was growing accustomed to the notion of escaping scrutiny and continuing her indiscretions. The investigator's call the following day confirmed my doubts. She was involved with a colleague, engaging in liaisons within their workplace after hours. Apparently, the investigator managed some unclear photos from a building opposite theirs. When he offered to proceed with obtaining video evidence at an increased cost, I authorized it without hesitation, ensuring the expenses were covered. As for me, about her stomach flu conveniently became my excuse to avoid intimacy with my wife. Also, I told Laura, my worry lingered, had I already contracted an STD from her. With that concern looming, I set my plan into motion. A penchant for poker was one of my vices. Monthly, I gathered with friends for a game, and my online poker pursuits, modest buy-ins of $5 or $10, earned me a decent return, considering my amateur status. We'd amassed a nest egg, primarily from my contributions, totaling just over $200,000. I was resolute in preventing Laura from claiming any part of it. Enter online poker. Utilizing my expertise, I established 5 untraceable accounts on a poker site, all under my control. I orchestrated head-to-head matches against myself, deliberately losing. Sure, the site took its cut with each game, but the loss was far less than what Laura might have gained in a divorce settlement. Losing our savings to 5 different players seemed less suspicious than to a single individual. The offshore poker site I used wasn't subject to US jurisdiction, unlikely to disclose client information. In a week, I drained our accounts, leaving a mere $10,000. Exactly a week later, Laura cited another late night at work, prompting me to alert the private investigator. He assured me he had everything under control. This time, when she returned home, her guilt seemed almost inexistent. She was becoming adept at her infidelity. The following morning, a PI confirmed he had the evidence I sought. I retrieved the DVD from his office, declining a written report, considering the footage sufficient. I settled his fees, acknowledging his efforts, and assured him he had no need for apologies. After all, he wasn't the one betraying me. I took the DVD back to my office, sealing myself inside and instructing my assistant not to disturb me. Surprisingly, I felt no nerves as I hit play. Truth be told, I already knew about her infidelity, so this footage wouldn't alter a thing. The video, shot from a concealed camera within the law office, boasted clear visuals and sound. I didn't dwell on how the I pulled it off. I simply cared that I had what I needed. Though I'd never met my wife's lover, the investigator had furnished me with extensive details about him. I had his personal background, from his marital status and children, to his family lineage, hometown, and even the church he attended. What caught me off guard, something the I hadn't disclosed prior, was the man's face. He was black. I hadn't seen the initial photos taken as I specifically requested video footage, unaware that my wife's paramo was black. Now, I know what you might assume. She went after a well-endowed black man. Yet, observing him, I noted he wasn't particularly more endowed than I was, maybe even slightly smaller. I'd watched the video with complete detachment. Any feelings I harbored for her had dissipated entirely. Some men in my position become emotional wrecks, desperate for reasons behind their spouse's betrayal. Me? I couldn't care less about the why. She did it, and that's all that mattered to me. One detail struck me. During their entire time together, he never mentioned me or his wife. Sexual contacts were not exciting, short caresses that went straight to intercourse. What stood out was their discussion, disparaging the law firm's partners. Intriguing. After viewing the footage, I approached my boss, confiding in him about needing a week off for personal matters. Thankfully, we were close, and I briefed him on the situation, requesting his cover. He'd been through a similar ordeal, and was empathetic, going above and beyond. He provided a list of out-of-state clients for me to visit, granting me a legitimate reason for my absence without tapping into vacation time. I left work early and swiftly packed a suitcase at home. According to my wife, I spun a tale about a customer's urgent computer crisis out of state, claiming I had to rush to tackle the issue. It wasn't entirely out of the ordinary for me to travel occasionally for business, although it was infrequent. She expressed her love and how much she'd miss me, urging me to hurry back. I sidestepped an "I love you too," and simply mentioned the rush to catch my flight. I wondered if she noticed my omission. Boarding an out-of-state flight, I proceeded with the next phase of my plan. Duplicating the video numerous times, I placed them in mailers and addressed them. To distance myself, I overnighted them to an old college friend on the East Coast, prearranged as a favor. I briefed him about receiving a box via next-day delivery, instructing him to open it and mail each item individually to reveal their postmarks. I made sure to establish my halfway-across-the-country alibi, ensuring witnesses could vouch for my location and work commitments. It may have seemed overly secretive, but I aimed to avoid any trace back to me. Videos were dispatched to every individual associated with Laura's law firm, including the man's wife, parents, and church pastor. I even sent one to my in-laws and the preacher from their church, along with copies sent to every one of her former friends whose addresses I could find. Our current friends received them as well. While some men might be ashamed to let their friends know about their wife's fidelity, I felt no such embarrassment. She was the one breaking vows, not me. I was the innocent party here. The final video was addressed to my home, meant for me, accompanied by a list of amateur sites, where I anonymously uploaded the footage for public viewing. Come Thursday, the storm broke loose. I didn't have all the specifics, but my wife and her lover were summoned to their boss's office, where the damning video led to their immediate termination. Shortly after, my wife's phone began buzzing with calls from friends who'd seen the footage. Her father erupted over the phone, disavowing any future contact with her or her mother. Friday brought a call from a couple of friends on my mobile, questioning me about the videos. I maintained my stance of being away on business, clueless about what they were referencing. Their update on the unfolding situation was a relief, highlighting that some of my friends stood by me more than my unfaithful wife. I phoned home, where Laura, sounding jittery, answered. I relayed the news of the calls from our friends about the video and informed her of my imminent return, warning that if the rumors were true, she'd better be gone and have a lawyer. Upon arriving home, she'd fled, leaving with only a few clothes. Later, I discovered she'd sought refuge with a divorced friend, coincidentally separated due to infidelity. I initiated divorce proceedings through a lawyer, vowing to have zero contact with Laura, except through legal representatives. Her attorney turned out to be unimpressive. Struggling after the scandal made many lawyers reluctant to associate with her. When I disclosed our assets at a mere 10 grand, she protested vehemently. However, I had evidence to prove I'd gambled away the rest before learning of her affair. The only other asset, our house, was devalued due to the declining real estate market. We'd lived there for just 3 years. Laura didn't grasp the situation and obtained a court order to sell the house, splitting the proceeds. I remained indifferent, with no intentions of staying in the house, especially since she couldn't afford the payments while unemployed. Clearing the remaining mortgage cost me 8 grand, shrinking our net worth to a mere 2 grand. She also pursued alimony. The final ruling determined that her unemployment was her own doing despite her capability to work, leading to the denial of alimony. I wrote her a check for $1,000, though it barely covered her lawyer's fees. Laura had dug her own financial hole, left almost friendless, abandoned by family, and aware she'd never secure employment in our city due to the scandal's widespread notoriety. Moving out of state became her only choice. I threatened legal action against Laura's former workplace for turning a blind eye to the affair between 2 married employees conducted during office hours. Settling for 300 grand, they gladly paid to salvage their tainted reputation. Liquidating my online poker accounts, I reclaimed most of my money. Financially, I emerged fairly unscathed, though I'd have given it all up to have a loyal wife and irreparable loss. In the years since, I've learned that Laura struggles as a waitress, thwarted in her attempts for better employment, by copies of her infamous video mysteriously surfacing whenever she applies elsewhere. A resume tainted by a history of office indiscretions and disparaging remarks about employers doesn't bode well for Laura. As for me, well, I have a few friends with benefits. Marriage again. Perhaps, though, I'd be upfront about my stance on infidelity, even if it didn't prevent issues in my marriage with Laura. Alright, that's the end of it. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video. Until next time, I'll see you again. Take care.